Good morning, good day, good evening, wherever you are, and warmly welcome to our second day of the 5th InsuResilience Annual Forum 2021. After an engaging agenda yesterday with leaders' dialogues on the relevance of premium and capital support, our regional risk pools discussion and insights with public-private partnerships, really leveraging scaling up activities, messages from the partnership, and an interview with Nobel Prize winner Abhijit Banerjee. We kickstart today an engaging agenda again with the third regional session on Asia Pacific. This session has been organized and will be moderated by Mr. Josh Ling, fund manager from Asia Pacific Climate Finance Fund of the Asian Development Bank. You will hear from 3 speakers insights and get more experiences from the ground. You will hear from Mr. Bikram Rana, project manager in the flood resilience program at Practical Action in Nepal. You will hear from Ms. Angelica Barlis, project manager of De-Risk Southeast Asia at Alliance of Biodiversity International and SEAT. And you will hear from Mr. Krishnan Narasimhan, lead specialist in insurance and climate adaptation and program manager for the Pacific Insurance and Climate Adaptation Program. On these, they will speak on insights from their implementation of 3 initiatives in the Asian Pacific region. They will highlight achievements, but also openly discuss challenges and share insights on their lessons learned from the field. Yeah, Josh, take it away.
And that's when you're live.
Thank you.
But I disappear now again.
Thank you.
Josh, you alive?
Okay, thanks. Good morning, everyone from Europe. Good morning, good afternoon in Asia, and perhaps already a good evening to those joining from the Pacific. Welcome to the regional session for Asia and the Pacific. My name is Josh Ling, and I work as a climate change specialist at the Asian Development Bank. In my role, I'm the fund manager of ACLIF, the Asia Pacific Climate Finance Fund. I'll share a little bit more about ACLIF later in the session. But in the next 80 minutes, we will hear from 3 really interesting and different examples of climate and disaster risk financing from the Asia Pacific region. Asia and the Pacific is really at the center of the climate crisis and the fight against climate change. The region experiences destructive effects from climate change through severe urban flooding, extreme winters, prolonged droughts, and various other hazards. Over 60% of the region's population works in sectors that are most at risk from climate change impacts. I'm very excited to have 3 great panelists with me here today. We're covering projects from Viet Nam, Nepal, and Fiji. The session will run as an open discussion. I have some questions prepared for our panelists, but I also encourage them to respond to each other's questions or to add to each other's answers, creating that open dialogue. And I do also hope that we have time at the end to take questions from the audience. So please do share these as we go along. Nonetheless, I won't say much more so we can get into the discussion. I'll introduce each panelist as I ask my first question. And I wrote the first question to allow us to get some background and a little bit more information about the 3 projects from today's session. So getting started, Angelica Barlis is the project manager at the Alliance for Biodiversity International and SEAT, the International Center for Tropical Agriculture. Laika, can you tell us about SEAT and about this insurance program? And could you please explain all the stakeholders that have come together to make this program and this index insurance happen for coffee farmers in Vietnam? Over to you.
Thank you so much, Josh, for this opportunity to have this conversation this afternoon or this morning, and to have this space to share what we have been doing in our respective projects. So so the Alliance of Biodiversity International in SEAT is an integral part of the CGIAR, which is a global partnership that unites international agricultural research organizations working towards a food secure future. So through our research and projects, the Alliance aims to contribute to address the 4 interconnected global crises that we're experiencing. It's climate change, biodiversity loss, environmental degradation, and malnutrition. But for this session, I want to put in context the role of the Alliance as one of the principal implementers of a regional climate change adaptation project in Southeast Asia called DIRIS Southeast Asia. So our lead implementing agency is the World Meteorological Organization, co-implemented with the University of Southern Queensland. So our project aims to help smallholder farmers in Southeast Asia, including Viet Nam, to better manage climate risk using seasonal forecasts and how translating this climate information into usable agro-advisories for farmers. So we are developing comprehensive risk management strategies and employing integrated risk management and risk transfer mechanism to maximize the resilience of smallholder farmers in Southeast Asia. So as we all know, not all the risks are manageable. So at some point there is a limit to adaptation. When it's no longer economically viable, you need to transfer it elsewhere. There is therefore another major component of the project is developing an innovative insurance product as a risk transfer mechanism complementing the climate services as a part of broader climate risk management strategy. So in a climate crisis situation that we are in right now, it is important to ask the right questions. For example, the coffee that we consume several times a day, where does this come from? Who are the producers of this? And how much effort is needed for this coffee to reach our cups. So in this project, the critical question that we ask is, what is the impact of climate risk on the coffee crop? And what are its implications on the farmer's income? So as we all know, the climate is a significant driver for coffee yield. So we develop prototypes for rainfall and temperature insurance product. So we identified several key challenges on how to actually come up with the pilot that we're doing. So first is how to develop a targeted indices that performs remarkably well to explain the coffee yield variations. So this particular work within the project is led by the University of Southern Queensland. So using 8,000 field observations data and working closely with the coffee industry and growers, we assess the climate impacts and co-develop indices that explain the yield losses for coffee. Also, we've written several scientific papers to gain the trust and credibility of the products. Also, we wanted to operationalize a small pilot insurance scheme, which costs around $150,000 in Central Highlands of Vietnam. So it's finding global reinsurance wasn't easy because it's quite a small scale. But we know from the experience that many small insurance schemes failed in the past because reinsurance companies refuse to provide cover. However, with the presence of our project partners, which is Willis Towers Watson and USQ, we negotiated a global and local frontal insurance provider to participate in the pilot scheme. I think another key partner that is critical in this pilot is e-com sustainability management services. So they are the ones who are really providing the technical assistance and guidance to build farmers' capacities to enable them to reach the standards for coffee certification. I think this pilot is led by the private sector, and with their leadership and commitment to provide socially responsible and farmer-focused solutions driven by innovations. Our team has worked together to develop a tailored approach on how to actually introduce the concept of insurance to the farmers and explaining how it can minimize the effects of climate risk to their crops and livelihoods. Another point that I want to share is the challenge of raising awareness and giving them or informing them that there is actually options for insurance to better protect them from climate risk. So ECOM, with the technical support from the Alliance, organized a series of insurance literacy workshops and evaluation survey with farmers in 2 provinces in the Central Highlands of Vietnam. So we presented the insurance product prototypes and co-identified together with the farmers the final products that we eventually piloted this year on this project. So these activities also guided the farmers on what is the concept of insurance and what are the benefits available from having the insurance. So in these workshops, we also explained the features of an index insurance and the types of risks it covers by sensitizing the farmers on the product through so we designed different risk-taking games in the workshops, like making decisions whether or not they're gonna buy an insurance. So it's really a good exercise because we saw who among the farmers are really willing to take risks or who are really safe to just keep what they have. So, and at the same time, through that exercise, we sensitize them to manage their expectations of the product. So explaining that it only covered the single peril and the frequency of the payouts of an index insurance. So that was clear with the farmers. So these I am sharing these were the initial activities that we did prior to the piloting of the projects. So piloting of drought index and excessive rainfall index for coffee. And our local insurer here in Vietnam who had previous pilot projects is the Baoming Insurance. So I think lastly, the key milestone from this pilot is that within the project, we only promise to deliver insurance product prototype. But having ECOM on board allowed our project to deliver beyond prototyping and committed to have these products piloted with the coffee farmers in Vietnam. So this initiative is really a significant outcome from the collective efforts and synergistic partnership, building on technical strengths of each organization and also the practical experience working with smallholder farmers. So by having an insurance product supported with scientific research strengthens the credibility of what we are offering to the farmers. So
Thank
over.
You. That's really interesting to hear, firstly about the number of stakeholders, but the role of the research institutions to design the index, the strong lead from the private sector, but still very centered around the end user in the design process. I think that's really, really interesting to hear. Thank you. I'll pass the word to Krishnan now. Krishnan Narasimhan is the global lead specialist for insurance and climate adaptation for UNCDF, the United Nations Capital Development Fund in Fiji. Krishnan will share insights from Pcap, the Pacific Insurance and Climate Adaptation Program, and their experiences from building the financial preparedness and resilience of people in the Pacific. Krishnan, I was wondering if you could share, please, a little bit more about what Pcap is trying to achieve in the insurance space. And I'm sure that many of the listeners, those tuning in, will be familiar with the work of the Pacific Financial Inclusion Program, that after more than a decade working on financial inclusion in Fiji and the Pacific, why has UNCDF's work shifted towards climate adaptation and insurance through the Pcap program? Over to you.
Josh, thank you very much, and also thanks to the InsuResilience team for this wonderful opportunity and invitation extended to me to be part of this exciting panel. You are indeed correct. UNCDF has established itself as one of the leaders in financial inclusion in several markets across Asia, Africa, and the Pacific. And particularly in the Pacific, through the joint program that we had been implementing since 2008 with the UN Development Program called the Pacific Financial Inclusion Program. More than 2 million Pacific Island adults were were able to gain access to appropriate and affordable financial services through the partner projects that we had implemented across 7 countries in the Pacific. A significant portion of the numbers covered were insurance customers. And when you look at the Pacific, the addressable market size is quite limited. So including the most populous country that we are talking about, Papua New Guinea, which has about, say, 8 to 9 million population. The total population that we're looking at is only about 11 million in all in the very many Pacific countries that we operate. So achieving more than 2 million within this limitation is indeed quite significant in terms of financial inclusion. That, of course, involved working with several stakeholders that included central banks, the private sector service providers, the mobile like telecom operators, NGOs, and civil society. And I mean, like, not to mention the significant support that the program received from its donors, namely Australia and New Zealand. Using the presence in these 6 Pacific countries, including full-time technical specialists, and having established good relationships with the government, private sector, etc., we thought that we should look at new opportunities that were emerging. And as I said before, insurance was indeed a big contributor to the 2 million like 2 million numbers. We had inclusive insurance like projects in Fiji, PNG, Samoa, Kiribati, and Vanuatu. And particularly, I should mention the initiative in Fiji, which was implemented or which is still being implemented with Fiji Care Insurance, a local insurance company, where we created the first bundled micro insurance like product for the Pacific. And that has been received very, very well, with more than 120,000 people covered. So for a small country like Fiji, which has just a 1 million population, this improved the insurance penetration from just 12% in 2015 to more than 40% by 2020. UNCDF has since launched two successor programs to the PFIP. One is, of course, the Pacific Insurance and Climate Adaptation Program that you just mentioned. And this was largely in response to the persistent development challenge in the region. Viewers and yourself would be aware that the Pacific is highly vulnerable to natural hazards. Several Pacific countries are among the top 15 or top 15 countries in the world in terms of vulnerability. And Vanuatu is, in fact, right on top. And there are, at present, very limited ex-ante instruments like insurance and lack of other disaster risk financing instruments, both at the meso and the micro level. And therefore, using the solid foundational work that we have done in the financial inclusion space and using the existing networks with insurers and reinsurers, it was only logical that we moved towards this area, looking at building resilience and also disaster preparedness through finance, adaptation, and insurance. UNCDF globally has its inclusive digital economy strategy of leaving no one behind in the digital era. We adopt a market systems development approach where catalyzing the ecosystem, the existing players, and building partnerships for goals. The work under Pcap is all about bringing the essence of our past work, fostering innovation, and supporting like coordination with partners. We will be working hand in hand with our sister program called the Pacific Digital Economy Program that will continue some of the work that was done in the area of digital financial services. And so we hope that using digital innovations, there would be last mile reach for the type of parametric insurance solutions that we have developed and that we have implemented now. See, these are in the pilot phase here in Fiji. It's only 2 months since it was launched on 25th of August. It's already seeing like quite some significant results, and we hope that we would be able to expand this further. Thanks. Over.
Thanks, Krishnan. I think it's really interesting that we say that so often these projects need to be long-term in their vision, and this is a great example how the foundational work that UNCDF has done has led into so many interesting areas. I like the example you mentioned of this product that increased insurance penetration all the way from 12% to 40%. And obviously now the work that you're doing on climate risk insurance, climate adaptation, as well as the digital economy as being the next steps. So thank you. Bikram Rana is the project manager of the Global Flood Resilience Program for Practical Action Nepal, supported by the InsuResilience Solutions Fund and as part of the Zurich Flood Resilience Alliance. Bikram, Practical Action has done a lot of work on flood resilience and has now designed a flood insurance product for Nepal. And I understand that it's almost ready for launch. Can you tell us a little bit more about this insurance and who does the flood insurance target and who is involved in offering it? Over to you. I don't seem to hear you. Bikram, perhaps just to check that you're not on mute. Okay, perhaps we'll try to come back to you, Bikram. Apologies about that. We'll see if we can sort out that technical difficulty. We'll come back to you shortly. Apologies for that. So perhaps I'll move on to a second round of questions for Laika and Krishnan, and Bikram, we'll come back to you. I wanted to move into a second round of questions where we focused on how to make these insurance products work. So vulnerable populations struggle to afford insurance, private sector stakeholders need to see a business case. Making insurance schemes work typically involves bringing a lot of actors coming together, and we've had some good examples from both of your projects so far. I had the chance to speak to both of you prior to the forum, and so noted a couple of very interesting details about your programs that I think we can highlight in some more detail. Laika, perhaps turning to you first, you mentioned that during your pilot, the coffee farmers willingly paid up to half of the insurance premium. I'm wondering if you could share some experiences on how you managed to achieve this. And maybe share a little bit more about how you're testing different business models and different premium payment models as this pilot expands. Over to you.
Thanks, Josh. Yeah, sure. This is really interesting, and like based on experience, it's also a learning process for all of us who is running this project. So I think the first success factor wherein farmers really paid up to even 50% of the premium is building the trust through an inclusive design process. So in our pilot, we have two groups, like two cases from two provinces in Viet Nam. So one case is in Dak Lak province for low rainfall or drought insurance cover. So for that province, the insurance premium is fully covered by ECOM. And the second case is in Lam Dong province for excessive rainfall, wherein 50% of the insurance premium is paid, I think, by 60% of the farmers included in the program. So for us, the result is really positive at the pilot phase. And we thought initially that one of the main challenges was the farmers' capacity to understand climate risks. However, as we go along the process of interacting with them through a series of workshops, it was evident that farmers are really aware of the climate risks and its potential impact on livelihoods. So this emphasized the strong relevance and focus of the index insurance product. So I think co-designing insurance solutions establish the trust and ownership among the farmers and e-com. It allows flexibility of the product design to be tailored to really what is needed from the farmers or from the coffee producers. So that's one, building trust through inclusive design process. And I think another key factor is empowering the farmers in making decisions. I think it is very important to engage the farmers as early as product development stage. So one of the key outputs in our workshop is to identify climate risks experienced by the farmers over time, historically, and to select an index insurance that is most relevant to them. So in the workshop, they identified drought, and they said that up to 40% yield losses per hectare are experienced by the farmers because of drought. And also for excessive rainfall during harvest, they experience around 30% yield loss. So this is it is where the ripe coffee cherries fall off the tree, and it makes more challenging for them to sun dry the cherries. So there is higher rates of defective coffee cherries, and then the coffee beans get darker, and it will be more difficult for the farmers to share the beans. So in Lamdong, for example, where we pilot the excessive rainfall index, the farmers acknowledge that drought really is an issue, and they are aware that they already have the capacity to manage the risk of drought in terms of irrigation techniques. However, farmers expressed that they had more concern on excessive rainfall between the months of July and August, because this is the fruit growth stage right before the ripening. So at this stage, fruits are getting big and prone to falling due to heavy rains. So based on the collective experience of the farmers, they arrived at a consensus on which climate risk should be covered and the months for policy coverage, and we also assess how much they are willing to pay for the insurance. So through this process, this gave the farmers the power to make informed decisions about the design of the product, which is really responsive and tailored to their specific needs. I think it is also important to establish a balance between the science and the integration of local knowledge of farmers, who I think they're the best people who better understand the climate risk and its implication on their farms. So with this process, the trust between the farmers, e-com, and the project was strengthened, and it showed transparency of how the product was actually developed. So this series of steps and process have established, again, the trust among the farmers, which, yeah, I think that's which eventually pay half of the insurance premium. In terms of the second point that you asked on business models, our approach is really incremental towards from pilot towards scaling phase. So at the beginning, I think early this year, before we actually piloted the products, the team developed the Coffee Climate Protection Insurance Scheme, which is currently being tested in 3 phases, implemented between 2021 and 2025. To specifically cover coffee farmers in Central Highlands from drought and excessive rainfall. So we are currently on the first phase. Wherein premium is fully covered by e-com, covering around 200 to 300 hectares. So we are currently processing the experience and learning that we have in this year, in year 1, and supplemented with additional studies on willingness to pay for insurance and to see how farmers change their behavior having after availing the insurance. So that's for the first phase. And then the phase 2 would be year 2 and 3, so between 2022 and 2023, with about we're targeting to have 750 hectares covered from the insurance. So here we are exploring a co-contribution model for the insurance premium supported by the evidence that we have from the first phase. So we are planning to have bilateral meetings with the industry players like coffee roasters explaining this initiative and to see how willing they are to support the farmers for the premium. And then the last phase would be really we wanted to scale to at least 1,000 hectares covered by the insurance by 2024 and 2025. So here, farmers, roasters, coffee trading will be part of co-contribution model to support the insurance premium. So we want the farmers to incrementally build their capacity to pay for the insurance premium. So we do that by continuous training, knowledge sharing, and gaining deeper understanding of the product. So we see, I think we have the same view among the stakeholders that are part of this project. We look at this as a shared responsibility across the supply chain, since each actor has inherent benefits if farmers are productive and protected from climate risk. So it is really essential to design an affordable products working within a system of partners who can adjust to the scale of smallholders in product provision and also having a strong customer relations. Over to you, Josh.
Thank you, Laika. So a number of interesting points there around building trust, empowering the farmers to make the decisions in that design process, and incrementally building the capacity of those farmers as well. I'll briefly come back to Bikram. Are you able to connect onto the audio now? Can we test, please? Hi, Bikram. Can you hear us? I think perhaps we still have issues. Krishnan, I'll come to you with a second question. Within the Pcap program, what kind of approaches have you taken to ensure that there's a business case for the insurance products that you're developing? How do you do this when, for instance, you have partners that might be skeptical about, for instance, the continuity of the premium payments over time? Over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. That's a very, very valid, very pertinent, and a very interesting question. In the Pacific markets, you know that there are challenges around supply side, demand side. So the typical demand side challenges, as was also mentioned earlier by Laika, include consumer awareness about insurance, their affordability to pay for insurance, and also access issues. So this also came out in the form of robust evidence when we partnered with the regional central banks to do demand side surveys in 2015 and again repeated in a couple of countries this year, especially in Fiji in 2020. So therefore, developing a business case for the provider and overall for the business model is indeed a big challenge in many financial inclusion initiatives in the Pacific, where the addressable market size is very small. The number of use cases are also quite limited. The level of maturity of these markets is also quite small, or rather still they are early stage markets, and there are not very many providers. So the number of products available are also quite limited. So therefore, when we started working on this market-based parametric insurance solution, you could actually say that we knew that, sort of relating it to golf, we did start with a very serious handicap, meaning that while many like parametric insurance models or like parametric insurance products across the world are subsidized either by donors or by the government, the fiscal position in many of the governments here in the region do not permit them to offer such subsidies. And we actually started during COVID times, which sort of accentuated the whole dimension of providing subsidies for such solutions. Therefore, we had to start with a market-based approach. We did want to start with a market-based approach. As I said earlier, we had experience of working with like insurers in this region, and thankfully, the insurers that we have partnered with for the first parametric insurance like deployment in the Pacific, namely like Fiji Care Insurance and Sun Insurance, sort of understand the market well. They are very established local companies. Why did we do this? In a market where like climate risk insurance solutions had not existed, and there was a long felt need and cry for solutions, and the leaders of the region were actually asking the development partners to come up with these solutions, especially for communities and for micro customers. So therefore, as a responsible development partner for the governments of the region and to other stakeholders in the Pacific, we thought that it was time to step up and bite the bullet. Our immediate ambition was to demonstrate that by coordinating the efforts of all stakeholders and building on the synergies from the past, and developing or establishing relationship between the private and the public sector, locally led innovations can be piloted, tested, and scaled. So that was the hypothesis, and I'm happy to say that the hypothesis has been validated in the sense that since the first product was launched on the 25th of August, it was a cyclonic storm product, extreme wind and extreme rain. It has now reached more than 1,000 customers through group aggregation, and these are all individuals who are paying premium themselves. There's absolutely no subsidy. So which means that market-based solutions can be made attractive. But we do recognize that the most vulnerable, very low-income households and possibly 10 to 15% of the population that cannot afford to pay premium at all will need some form of support. And for this, what we have recently done, and this is something which is still in the final stages of the approval process, is that we have partnered with the World Food Programme to develop a pilot for the social welfare recipients in Fiji who would be supported through this pilot. This is a typical example of a macro to micro scheme where the Department of Social Welfare would be the macro level or the master policy holder, but the beneficiaries would be individual welfare recipients who are on like government like welfare payments. What we want to prove through this is that there is a case for developing such products or expanding on the pilot product that we have now developed, which should be launched or which should be made available in the next 2 weeks. So this will help throw insights into how donors and governments can targetedly look at specific segments of the population that would need support, whereas the others who can afford to pay premium should pay the premium for themselves. Only then we can have a market-led approach, which will lead to building resilience. Like overall, the macro to micro schemes or the subsidized schemes, which can be targeted at the most vulnerable, can build a regular premium pool. This will give confidence to the insurance industry that if we cover this particular like group, we are assured of a particular level of premium coming in. So this was actually demonstrated in the earlier bundled micro insurance as well, where the Fiji government pays premium for nearly 90,000 welfare recipients for their existing indemnity insurance cover. The products that are now available in the market through our efforts and through our work with our technical support partners is that even for low intensity events like a category 1 or a category 2 cyclonic storm, I mean, so there is cover, so there is payout which can happen for even Cat 1 and 2. Now, what does this mean? It means that a person who gets insured need not wait for 10 years like till a claim is paid, because the recent experiences show that the frequency with which these events are happening are now becoming more, and the intensity is also increasing. And therefore, once these claims get paid, that indirectly helps in building trust, and then people become confident in saving to pay the premium to build sustainability. But at this stage, all this is told with a rider. I must hasten to add that we are still in the early stages of the pilot. Like I said, it's only about 2 months since this product was launched. The pandemic is also has heavily impacted the economic situation of the region, because this region is heavily reliant on tourism. And the pilot results, or how the pilot flows over the next couple of years, will provide valuable insights, both for replication in the Pacific in other countries, as well as going beyond the Pacific in the years to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Krishnan. And I'd love to come back to you with another question a little bit later about the replication within the Pacific. I apologize for the technical difficulties we've been having. I'm going to turn to Bikram again to see if he can give us an introduction to the flood risk insurance that they've been working on. Bikram, are you online? It seems we still can't hear Bikram, unfortunately. Okay, maybe I could pause the session for a moment. In any case, I wanted to briefly mention the work of ACLIF. I mentioned the Asia Pacific Climate Finance Fund, which is a multi-donor trust fund managed by ADB that supports the design and implementation of financial risk management products that aim to scale up climate investment, climate action, and disaster risk management solutions. I have a brief video that will explain the work of the fund, and I'm wondering if that could be put online now, please. Thank you.
Asia and the Pacific is responsible for around 50% of global greenhouse gas emissions, and the overall level of emissions continues to grow. The region also experiences devastating extreme weather events, and climate change is making these increasingly frequent and more severe. Developing countries have an urgent need to invest in climate change mitigation and adaptation. To limit global warming to below the 2-degree target, estimates suggest an annual investment of at least $200 billion in climate-related infrastructure is needed across the region, increasing even higher beyond 2030. Current levels of climate investment fall well short of these levels. The Asia-Pacific Climate Finance Fund, ACLIF, aims to unlock capital for climate investments and improve resilience to the impact of climate change through the innovative use of financial risk management products. Through ADB and non-ADB projects, these financial risk management products support ADB's developing member countries to scale up the adoption of climate technologies. For example, guaranteeing the performance of new renewable energy solutions could accelerate their take-up by providing assurances to new users. Mobilize new sources of private sector climate financing. credit, liquidity, or other market risks may limit private sector investment in climate projects. The smart use of financial risk management products can scale up climate investment through blended finance solutions. Support investment into climate-sensitive sectors. Sectors such as agriculture, water, fisheries, and others are highly exposed to climate risks. Yet, more than 60% of the people in Asia and the Pacific work in sectors highly susceptible to changing weather patterns, including some of the region's most vulnerable populations. Using financial risk management products to manage this exposure can increase investments into these sectors and foster their growth. Address extreme weather events. Products such as insurance can help improve the resilience of vulnerable and low-income populations by enhancing their financial preparedness for extreme weather events, in turn supporting more rapid recovery. Acliff's credit enhancement products are supporting the structuring of renewable energy projects in Uzbekistan and the Pacific Islands. The fund is exploring how financial risk management products can incentivize green lending in Kazakhstan. Acliff is providing seed grants to startups working on innovative technology-related climate solutions across Asia and the Pacific. Acliff is also supporting the development and rollout of disaster insurance solutions for city governments in the Philippines, as well as for micro, small, and medium enterprises through the V20's Sustainable Insurance Facility. Acliff is a multi-donor trust fund administered by ADB, established with financial support from the government of Germany's BMZ. Acliff supports the achievement of the targets of the Paris Climate Agreement and complements other international initiatives such as the InsuResilience Global Partnership and its Vision 2025 target to cover 500 million poor and vulnerable individuals against climate and disaster shocks by 2025. Acliff also supports the V20's Sustainable Insurance Facility and the development of climate and disaster risk insurance solutions in V20 economies of the region. To find out more, get in touch with the Acliff Fund Management Team and learn about how Acliff is supporting ADB to achieve a prosperous, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable Asia and the Pacific.
As the video mentioned, a number of Acliff's projects contribute towards the InsuResilience Global Partnership's Vision 2025, with its objective of protecting 500 million poor and vulnerable people against climate and disaster shocks. Acliff is supporting disaster risk insurance for city governments in the Philippines, which is a case study that you can read more about in the InsuResilience magazine that was just released. The fund also supports climate risk insurance through the microfinance sector in India and supports the V20's Sustainable Insurance Facility in developing climate risk insurance for MSMEs in the Philippines and hopefully soon in Fiji too. We're working closely with Krishnan with the hope of supporting the Pcap program to develop climate risk insurance solutions for MSMEs in Fiji. Anyone that's interested in more information on that, please feel free to get in touch with me. But maybe on that topic and speaking about how we reach the Vision 2025 target and expand these programs to reach millions of poor and vulnerable individuals, I want to talk a little bit about how we make these insurance schemes scale and reach as many individuals as possible in ways that we can maximize the impact of these schemes. And Krishnan, I mentioned before, or rather you mentioned before, that Pcap is designed as a regional program. So after piloting in Fiji and learning lessons and seeing some of the successes and challenges, how do you plan to expand this to the rest of the Pacific? Over to you.
Thanks, Josh. So Pcap, or the Pacific Insurance and Climate Adaptation Program, by design is a regional program over multi-years. We, having recognized the challenges of developing a market-based solution, we said that we designed for an inception phase, which is 2021 and 22, where also due to pandemic restrictions, we thought we'll focus only on Fiji and Vanuatu. Fiji, obviously, because we are based here, the sub-regional headquarters of the various UN agencies are in Fiji. And also the Pcap is implemented by with UNCDF as the lead agency, but also supported by the UN University based in Bonn, which houses the Munich Insurance, Munich Climate Insurance Initiative as our technical partner, and the UN Development Program also as one of our implementing partners. We chose Vanuatu also because it's the most vulnerable country in the world, and therefore we have to do justice in bringing solutions to that country. So the monitoring, evaluation, and learning agenda that we have as a program, as well as the South-South cooperation agenda that is built into the program design, envisages lessons learned from the inception phase in Fiji and Vanuatu would be applied in necessary modifications to the design if needed for a regional replication and expansion in the Pacific and beyond. We have already developed a research and an assessment plan to be deployed from the first quarter of next year. This would look very critically at gathering insights from the customers that have joined in the last few months and will be joining till the end of the year, the distribution partners, the insurance companies, and the people in the same communities who have not joined, and we will try to find out why they have not joined. And there is going to be other aspects that will be looked into this research, which will also include the gender and social inclusion aspects. All this is being done to look at specific product variants that need to be developed. We will also look at some of the challenges that have been faced by the distribution partners and how this can be overcome. We will also look at what the insurers feel in terms of their capacity and appetite for expanding the portfolio. So based on this research, which is going to start very soon, even as the pilot is going on, would be looking at product variants that will include bundled and hybrid products, namely combining some of the existing like indemnity products with the index products, or linking some of the insurance products with savings, etc. While our technical capacity allows us this sort of experimentation and rapid cycle sort of like iteration with such products, we are also conscious about the market capacity to absorb such innovation and new product development. It was indeed quite challenging to get to the stage where we are in. Just sort of giving certain insights on the timelines. The program itself, the Pcap program itself, was launched officially on the 2nd of December 2020, so which was at the fag end of last year. And we started actual implementation only from the first quarter of this year. So within about 6 months into implementation, the first product, of course, we had done some foundational work even last year in terms of demand studies, some product prototypes having been developed, and some discussions having been held with the regulators. Of course, we have very supportive regulators, and that's why through the regulatory sandbox, we could get the approvals quite quickly. The Fiji government has been extremely supportive. It's one of the few countries, or maybe the only country in the world, that has given a value-added tax exemption even before the product was available in the market. So that shows the very strong support from the government. But the replication would all depend upon the level to which there is support from the respective other governments. There's support from the other other regulators. Of course, we are engaged with all regulators in the region through different forum, and we have been received well. What is to be considered in the Pacific especially is that while there are some common features or characteristics for the Pacific Islands, these are all small island developing states, but they have their own unique ways, which means that one size will not fit all. Lessons learned from Fiji would of course be very, very useful, but we'll have to approach each country based on its own capacities, based on its own market size, based on its own market strength, and therefore we are going to take that approach. We are confident that with our established relationships in these countries and having done other projects, namely on say digital finance, mobile money, and also remittances, we have opportunities to work to replicate in these other markets. We also have ambition. So within UNCDF, the work in the Pacific through the Pcap is being seen as an incubation or an incubator for being also tried out in other countries, because UNCDF globally is present in several LDCs and developing markets where we have on the ground presence, we have existing project partners, we have robust relationships with funding partners, and therefore we are looking at it from both regional as well as global expansion. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Krishnan. I'll also ask those in the audience to start posting your questions. We will hopefully have time at the end to cover some of these. But first to Laika, I understand you have plans to expand your work on coffee insurance to 4 countries. And obviously you've mentioned that one of your key successes is the trust that you've built with the policyholders in Vietnam. How are you planning to replicate this in the other markets that you expand to?
Okay. Yes, I think as I've mentioned earlier, there is Southeast Asia project covers 4 countries. So that's Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar. At the beginning of the project in early 2019, we did scoping visits in these 4 countries to assess the existing insurance landscape of the 4 countries and to really have an understanding on what is happening. So we found out, we want to know if there are opportunities to pilot index insurance, but in Lao PDR, for example, the insurance market almost do not exist. And in Myanmar, we are looking at flood index insurance to develop as prototype. And we intend to present this to our agribusiness startup partner there, Village Ling. But due to the current political situation in the country, it's a bit challenging to carry out face-to-face workshops or surveys. But in terms of ideally, we want to have a partner like Ecom with strong interest for innovation and inherent mission to help protect smallholder farmers from climate risk. So we still intend to apply user-centered approach and industry-driven insurance initiatives to create strong possibility for replication in other areas where we want to build a model that is sustainable over time. In Cambodia, it's quite promising in terms of replicating this. We're trying to adopt the similar approach for Cambodia. So we develop prototypes of insurance products and currently being road tested. So we are in discussion with local frontal company, Forte Insurance, which shown interest on the product. And most importantly, we already started conversation with Cambodia Agricultural Producers Farmers Federation. So they're helping us in terms of enhancing awareness and capacity building. So they started introducing the concept of insurance with different farmer groups that are members of the federation. And we also plan to carry out capacity building activities. So I think showing pieces of evidence that supported the significant successes in the stage where that we are doing in Vietnam will encourage potential partners in these countries. So I think it's really important to listen what they think really is needed in terms of the priority climate risk, and also having the flexibility to adapt the insurance product design that are available for road testing. I think the road testing process is also crucial before we do the pilot. So we intend to apply the same workshops and insurance literacy activities, and the interaction with farmers. So that's what we are planning to do until the end of the project. Over to you.
Thanks, Laika. We still haven't managed to get Bikram, unfortunately. Maybe I can give read out a brief paragraph about the work that's happening in Nepal. So we're talking about a project that's supported by the InsuResilience Solutions Fund. And in order to protect the most vulnerable and marginalized people in Western Nepal from the effects of flood, the partnership, which I guess is the various stakeholders that are involved, aim to develop an index-based insurance product, and large parts of the insurance premium are subsidized by the federal government. The community cooperatives and the microfinance institutions will act as the insurance policyholders as well as the distribution partners. And the approach being used in this project foresees an active participation and the role of cooperatives being quite strong, as well as the community disaster management committees and local authorities as well. So again, a number of stakeholders coming together, and all of this to make sure the insurance solution is well embedded within the local and the local disaster and climate resilience plans of the regions in which it's launching. I had one question from the audience, Krishna, and this is for you. It's a clarification, just to repeat the number of people covered for the product that launched in August, and whether these numbers are covered as groups or on an individual basis.
Yeah, thank you, Josh, and thank you for the participant who raised this question. So the first parametric micro insurance product that was developed by UNCDF with our climate risk modeling partners, the Weather Risk Management Services, is a cyclonic storm with two variants. One is for the heavy wind and one is for the wind plus rainfall product. So this product is now available to smallholder farmers, fishers, market vendors, and small business, and I would say micro business owners. It is available for a maximum insurance cover of Fiji dollar 1,000, which is approximately $500 US. And right now the distribution model is through group aggregation. The cooperatives and other agriculture agencies like the Fiji Rice, the Copra, the Fiji Coconut Millers, the Sugarcane Growers Council in Fiji, the like Thailivu Dairy Cooperative, the Cane Farmers Cooperative Savings and Loan Association, they are the distribution partners. Fiji Care and Sun Insurance are the joint co-insurance. I mean, they offer this product through a co-insurance arrangement. One is a lead insurer and one is a co-insurer. And the individuals, the farmers and the members of these cooperatives are those who are covered, which means there is a master policy contract between the insurance company and the cooperative or the aggregator, and the individuals get a certificate of insurance. That's how it operates. So as I am talking to you, the numbers have just exceeded 1,000. 1,000 individuals covered.
Thank you, Krishnan. Again, I encourage the audience to continue to submit their questions. Perhaps another one from me, though. Krishnan, starting with you, I guess you had mentioned this stream of work on digital, the digital economy, and obviously digital components of the solution within your work in Pcap. And Laika, I think you have plans to develop a digital platform that will support the work that you're doing. So perhaps I'll turn to you after. But Krishnan, could you perhaps expand a little bit on what are some of the digital aspects of the program that you have?
Thanks, Josh. It's a very important question. So digital has always been in the DNA of UNCDF. So any intervention where UNCDF is involved will have a digital component. So right from the beginning, understanding that the Pacific has challenges of reach, of geography. I mean, can you imagine that in a country like Fiji we have 300 islands? There are other countries that are highly dispersed. Each country has thousands of square kilometers of sea area. So these countries have like challenges of reach. So you cannot have the regular brick and mortar systems. So you need to look at sort of like digital coverage. So therefore, under Pcap, we have partnered with a fintech insurtech provider in developing what's called the iOnboard like platform. Now, what is this? For the cooperative or the aggregator, for them to cover their members and for them to have a digital database of their members and also cover their field location, including the GIS location or the GPS location of where they are involved, because in any index product, what's important is where the insured person is located, and we need to capture that with accuracy. So therefore, this digital onboarding system has been developed not only to capture the records properly, but ensure a seamless transfer of these records from the aggregator or from the farm, I would say, from the field to the cooperative, on to the insurer, on to the reinsurer, and on to the modeler, in a seamless manner and back. Then the second level of digital intervention is at the stage of payments, both for premiums and for claims. Now we have again here partnered with the two major service providers in the Pacific, namely Digicel and Vodafone, that are the mobile network operators. We had existing partnerships with them for mobile money. So therefore, we sort of extended that partnership into this. They have like created the integration that is required for allowing the premium payment to be made from the cooperative to the insurance company. So this project is underway. It'll happen in the last quarter. So recently, both these like telecommunication companies have also done an excellent integration with the government of Fiji, where the COVID response payments have been made through the mobile money. So using the same technology, an option will be given to the insurance company to allow for mobile wallet payments of claims directly after a claim is triggered into the mobile wallets of the customer, which means that the turnaround time for claim payments can be drastically reduced. And we are even looking at 3 to 5 days of turnaround time for claim payments once the triggered event happens. Thanks.
Thanks, Krishnan. And the speed of the payout is almost equally as important as making it itself. I think when it's not timely, then these individuals need to depend on other mechanisms that effectively aren't as don't have the same impact that insurance does. That's why we're putting it in there in the first place. Laika, did you have something you wanted to add on some of the digital aspects of your program?
Sure. It's nice to hear. I think maybe after the session, we can touch base again, Krishnan, because it's really clearly you have the best practices in terms of digital solutions and insurance, where I think that's our vision. After this year, we're already in the process of building the tool. But yeah, so at the moment, after with the two pilots that we have, in this year. So what we did is after the end of insurance policy coverage, ECOM delivered an official letter to individual farmers as a notice of non-payout. So obviously this took some time and effort, and with the COVID-19 situation and restriction, it was challenging. But we want to do that because it strengthens the transparency. So we distributed the notice together with the daily rainfall record. So it keeps the momentum of communication and visibility of the project to the farmers. So yeah, and our vision really maybe in the coming year or two is to develop a mobile application or web portal wherein farmers can directly access anytime their insurance policy with updates on the rainfall record level versus the insurance attachment within the coverage period. So yeah, again, this increases the transparency of the process, and it strengthens the trust of farmers on the product and the implementers. So I would like to learn more about how Christian did this in their project.
Thanks very much, Laika. We have one question from the audience. I'll read out exactly as it's written and maybe turn it to you both. So what is unique about the Asia Pacific region with climate and disaster risk finance and insurance? What specifically needs to be taken into consideration to make the solution successful for the community? I guess Asia Pacific is very unique as a region, but there's obviously a lot of uniqueness within the region as well. So feel free to answer with respect to the uniqueness about designing solutions in Asia and the Pacific, or perhaps talk about your individual markets, knowing that Vietnam is very different to the Pacific Islands or specifically Fiji. So again, what is unique about the region with climate and disaster risk finance and insurance, and what specifically needs to be taken into consideration to make the solution successful for the community?
So Laika?
So I think as I've mentioned in the 4 countries that we're working in, the maturity of the insurance landscape is really, there are a lot of difference among, for example, in Laos versus in Vietnam. So in Vietnam, we just recently approved the decree for the insurance. So I think it is important to learn or to know about the stakeholders or the key players in the country, and identify what are the opportunities wherein we can support and strengthen the current initiatives. So like having a champion, for example, like ECOM as a private sector is very important to have a project that is really successful. So yeah, so I think it's from my side.
Josh, see, I mean, I can certainly talk for the Pacific. And then when you talk about Asia Pacific as a whole, there's a lot of difference between Asia and the Pacific. So number one is the size of the market or the size of the countries. So some of the countries that I am talking about in the Pacific have just 10,000 population, which could be covered in one apartment block in Manila, or at least in say Mumbai or Delhi. So the dimensions are totally different. So the solutions have to be totally different. And another thing is some of these extreme weather events that are occurring, especially in this parts of the world, Southwest Pacific, so to say. Do not, I mean, see, you can't change geography of this region because this is a region that is going to be persistently affected by these extreme events. So therefore, there has got to be application of proper science to back the solutions that are being developed, and For that, there needs to be a higher flow of climate finance towards finding solutions and lasting solutions for this region. Because at the end of the day, when the COP is about to start in a day or two, the Pacific is not a contributor to the global warming or to the climate change that is happening, but it is facing the brunt of all those things that are happening in the form of extreme of increased extreme weather events. And these are all small countries with very undiversified and very limited economies that do not have the financial capacity to find solutions or to implement these solutions. And therefore, there is a need for a higher flow of global finance and global science and global technology and global solutions towards this region. And we in the UNCDF very strongly feel that we have a role to play, and that's exactly what we're thinking. And we're extremely happy for being the catalyst to bring together so many partners to find such solutions in these markets. Thanks.
Thanks to you both. I think you've both mentioned, both projects have plans to expand to further countries, and you've both mentioned that although there are lessons learned in each market, each new geography or country or whatever it might be that you step into really requires a new approach, or at least approaching the market with a fresh perspective and saying, what do we need to learn? How do we need to approach it in this market? What is unique about this market? So the region might be unique in some ways, but I think you've both highlighted very well that each individual market is also very unique, and that's important as you expand the different products and projects. We have one more question from the audience. Perhaps it might end up being our last question. So consumer awareness and education is critical, and that's been highlighted by both of you. Which of the stakeholders bears the burden and the costs for this? Maybe I could turn to you first, knowing how building the trust has been such an important component of your project.
Yes, I think it has implication across the supply chain in terms of, as I've mentioned initially, we thought that farmers really didn't have understanding of climate risk and its implication, but they're more actually knowledgeable on what is happening on the field. So for us, we see that this is really a shared responsibility across the value chain actors for coffee. And I think in terms of supporting the farmers through insurance or risk management mechanism, everyone benefits, from the producer side up to the roasters and markets. So every actor has inherent benefits to it. So I think it's really essential to start with really understanding the problem and its implication, and by having farmers have a deeper understanding, they'll be able to participate more with full confidence and trust on the product, and eventually flow that trust across the value chain. Like now we're on looking at approaching the roasters, which is the next that we are really what we are doing with the farmers is beneficial, and making them to ignite the interest from the roasters, that they're really so that they can see the positive impact to the farmers, which the smallholder farmers. And I think it is like a collective responsibility that we have to do in the end with this collective crisis that we are actually experiencing.
Thank you. Christian, I'll pass to you in case you want to add some words.
Yeah, so it's a very it's a very important point, because it all stems from the basic work on financial literacy that we all have to do. So the UNCDF has been working on financial education in schools. So we have one of the best global practice models of integrating financial education within school curriculum in Fiji, which means that children right from class 1 to class 12 learn personal money management skills. And this was a project implemented from 2011 to 2017, and now it's been owned by the government of Fiji through its Ministry of Education. So we have also been working on developing financial literacy and implementing them at the tertiary and vocational training schools. So therefore, under our empowered consumers work stream, this is ingrained in all our projects, which means that any partner project has to have a strong element of financial literacy or or awareness embedded for the product that is being deployed. So and increasingly we have started using digital interfaces also for such reach. And you would have seen some of the educational videos that that this program has been developing to reach the mass market. So in the end, an informed customer with better financial capacities leads to sustainability of the whole of the whole package or the whole model. So unless that happens, it will be extremely difficult to ensure usage. So the uptake may happen basically because of some sort of intermediation, but the continued usage will all depend upon how financially aware, how financially competent, and what are the financial capacities that have been transferred to the end user. And there is a need for more investments in that area. Thanks.
Thank you to you both. Unfortunately, we're coming to the close of the session and we still haven't managed to connect Bikram. I have been notified that InsuResilience will share the examples from Bikram from this work on flood insurance in Nepal on their website. But as we've come to a close, I guess I'm only really left to say some thank yous. So firstly, thanks to the InsuResilience Secretariat for their support in putting together this session. And a big thank you to our panelists, to Laika, to Krishnan, and also to Bikram for their time and for also sharing insights from their work. It's been a really interesting discussion, and thank you very much for your time. So I'll close the session there and pass back to the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you very much, Josh, and thank you very much, dear panelists. That was a very exciting session, and I really think we need more examples from the fields, from the different countries, hear the success stories, understand the challenges that you're encountering, and try to share the best practices. I think, and after having listened carefully to what you said, is that there is still a human touch in it. It's also important to build a good relationship with the customers, build confidence and trust on the products, as Angelica has explained. And I think that's very important for all of the solutions. I mean, financial literacy, understanding the product, understanding what climate risk insurance and finance can do is so important. Yeah, we have heard a lot. We have the opportunity to network now. This is why I would like to invite you to join the networking in the breakout room. I hope technology will work well. I apologize very much for the technical glitches we had encountered in the sessions. And as Josh has said, we're trying to get the contribution by Bikram, Rana and put it on the website of the InsuResilience Global Partnerships pages. So now let's look into the networking opportunities, and I hope you are here and would like to share and discuss challenges. We know that in these online conferences, it's always hard to meet people and make connections. So we have tried to set up a series of rooms for you that up to 10 people can meet, share your work, share experiences, and learn about others. However, before you go, that I want to also share with you that the rest of the day is also exciting. Please stay tuned in and listen to the upcoming sessions. We have a very great leaders dialogue ahead of us, learning about resilience increase of smallholder farmers through inclusive insurance. And I can share with you one of the founders of the InsuResilience Global Partnership is on the panel there. Yeah, and this is also followed by several breakout sessions, again, where you can choose from a range of topics like gender, urban heat stress, adaptation planning, leveraging private capital, also digitalization. We just heard about it, how important it is in unviable regions, for example. Yeah, you can enter these sessions in a more intimate and informal setting to engage with the experts in these fields. But for now, please click on the button below and you will be taken to your networking room. So I thank you very much for your attention and enjoy.